Hello and welcome to our Friday webinar. I'm your host, Laura Doreen. And today we got a great guest today. We are going to be with Ann Brooks. She is the co-founder and president of the Phoenix Landing Foundation. She is going to be talking about, welcome Ann. Ann's going to be talking about pet bird housing interior design, setting the cage up for action. So this will be something that I think we can all have some good insight and value and takeaway for today. So Ann, welcome. Nice to see you. And as you wait for people to log in, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you have a big event coming up. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. In fact, I have it as one of my first slides just to make a pitch if you didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good, because I don't want us to not talk about that, because it's such a great event.
I appreciate that.
Just curious, what year or how many years have you had this event? What year are we on?
The wellness retreat, we do it every 2 years. It started in 2012. It's the brainchild of Dr. Susan Orez, who's on our board, and so we do it every 2 years.
Okay, every 2 years. All right, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, in Asheville.
Nice, very nice. And so you have a presentation for us today, so this is going to be nice and less visual. And so if we have time, just gonna let everyone know, like we usually do, we'll take questions at the end if we have time for it, and to use the Q&A button. So let's see. Well, we already got people logging in. We're gonna have a good audience today.
Great. Yeah.
So I guess let's see, give people a couple minutes. I think, you know what, we should, because we want to make sure we have time for the questions at the end. So do you want to take it away? I know you have a screen share for us.
Sure.
And we'll go from there.
That sounds great. Well, thank you for having me today, and we can go straight away to the slide about the retreat and talk about it now if you like. So this is what's coming up June 4th and 5th. As Laura said, we have it every 2 years. We try to have some theme. The theme this year is in sickness and in health. We try to have a good a group of veterinarians who talk about a variety of issues, both in terms of prevention, diagnosis, and remediation. And then we also try to give a little bit of time to all the other aspects of good parrot care, which is behavior, nutrition, enrichment, and conservation. So there are 4 simultaneous tracks. So if you want to just go make toys, great. Or if you want to talk about the endocrine system and get real geeky, you could do that. So there's something for everybody all the time. So it's a lot of fun, and I hope you could join us.
Wow. And just to see that list of names, that's the who's who of veterinary knowledge and behaviorists, and you got everything covered there. So it looks like an awesome lineup.
We do. We have a lot of fun. We really do. So it's a great time to have more direct interaction with some of the people that we know of or hear about or follow, and just have more personal time together. It's really can make a difference in how we go home and then look at how we care for our birds. So, all right. Shall we get started on interior design? Okay, great.
Yes, let's check this out. This would be awesome.
All right. Well, this class is mostly ideas about how you can give more activity to your bird, more enrichment, make life more fun. I have a lot of photos and video because I know that sometimes helps people learn and get new ideas. But that's the goal today, is to inspire you to take a few new ideas and put them to work in your house. Because, you know, in the wild, which is a picture of a bird behind me here, this is a picture we took in Brazil. Those birds have lots of space, lots of enrichment, lots of opportunity. And then we take our captive birds and we put them in fairly small spaces with not a whole lot to do in many cases, and not a whole lot of enrichment to make their lives more mentally and physically enriched. So they're both important. So when I start a new class, I always ask the question of whatever it is I'm trying to present. And in this case, it's like, what is a cage? I mean, I think it's good for us to think about life from the parrot's point of view. What does the cage mean to the bird? What is the purpose of the cage? And what are we going to do with it? So I asked myself that question, and this is the answers that I came up with, because I think Each bird has its own personality, of course, but a lot of birds spend a lot of time in their cage, especially if you're away from home a lot. So it's really important that that space be a protected, valuable, enriched space for the bird. And I like to think of it as a house. You know, if you only lived in one room or an efficiency and you had very little stuff and you spent a lot of time there, you might find that a pretty dull existence, right? So birds like to move around and they go to different places to do different things. So I like to think of it as like rooms where they're going to go. They usually sleep often in the same place. They can eat and play in a variety of spaces. They need to bathe, they need to move, and they just need to have a sense of safety and comfort in whatever cage they're in. So we need to make that possible for them as well. And this, I just pulled up 3 cages and 3 birds that came to us recently as examples of what we see, that we're close to 3,400 birds that have entered our system. So we definitely see them come in all kinds of conditions. In this case, the cockatoos actually have fairly decent cages, but look how boring and empty they are, right? And the Quaker is in a very small cage, in my opinion, for a Quaker. But this is what we see, and we try to change going forward the kind of life that they have after this. So when I start to put a cage together, I always start with the purchase. Because if you put up the toy up first or the bowl up first, you're probably going to end up moving it around. So I like to think of a cage needing lots of purchase, especially if your bird is spending a lot of time outside the cage, then you can cram that cage full of activity. And so I call it a super highway of purchase. I want the bird to move around in a whole lot of different ways, especially now that I don't know about you guys, but I find cages are really good quality cages are harder and harder to come by. And the powder coating is pretty bad. And so if your bird is having to use the bars to get around, they're putting a lot of wear and tear on those bars, right? So the more variety of perches you have, that they're using that for their transportation system within the cage. And that helps also protect the integrity of the cage. So, and the power coating. But the key is to have an opportunity to choose where to go, how to get there, and to move. So, you know, we're just going to breeze through some basics and then put it all together. But perches, I think, you know, in the old, those of you who've had birds a really long time, I don't know if you remember back in the day, they used to say, get a perch that fit the foot in a certain way where they, you know, it was a certain place on the perch. I call that jibber jabber. I think you need to have every size, every shape, every texture possible, because if you look at birds in the wild, they're not looking for that exact shape. They're moving around in all different ways. And so the little birds like big perches and the big birds like little perches. So think of it as almost like Goldilocks, you know, get one that's too big, get one that's too small, one that's just right, when really they're all just right. So it's really important for the feet. And here's an example of feet. A lot of veterinarians find birds have foot issues, and that's because they've been on perches that cause problems on the bottom of their feet. They're too rough, but also they're just not getting activity. I have a macaw that was 20 years on one perch, and her tendons have, you know, she's atrophied. She could hardly move around when she first came to me. But now she hangs upside down by one toe going, look at me, because she had to get that activity back in her feet again, right? I'm going to show you in a few minutes what happens sometimes, but here's just, if you're going like, what kind of perch can I use? Well, there's all kinds, and I encourage you to have a little of everything in your cage. And the key is to have a cage that's wide enough, because that's how birds move. They move sideways, they don't move up and down. So wide is what counts for bird health. So the wider the cage is, the more you have room to actually add this variety. And you can make them if you live somewhere where there's safe wood. You know, here's just some really simple ways to put some quick perches together. I mean, if certain plants, which we're going to talk about in a minute, there's some you can just go out, snap off, shove in the cage, consider it, you know, enrichment for the day. There are grooming perches. We get a lot of birds that come to us with those concrete perches. We throw them away. If they don't have a smooth spot on the top, like this picture shows, then I find it's just really hard. And a lot of times people put that concrete perch at the top of the cage because they think, oh, that's going to help groom the nails while they sleep and spend 12 hours on that perch. Well, all they're really doing is putting a lot of wear and tear on the pad of the foot. And I don't think it's very comfortable or healthy in the long run. So not my choice of perch. We are huge fans of shelves. Almost every bird I have ever known has loved to have a shelf. This is little Pipsqueak in the left corner there, who's going to be with us throughout today. He likes to sleep on his shelf inside his little hut, which is a whole nother topic we could talk about. Huts are not always very safe, but they make a lot of great shelves these days. This sun deck, for example, is less than $10. We sell it at our store. I love the natural inspiration brackets where you can replace it with 2x4s. If you want a long-term lifetime shelf, the stainless steel shelves Expandable Habitats makes are great. Just, somewhere where the bird can put their feet flat. So you can put those sun decks actually pick up and move, and you can put them on the inside, the outside. You can move them around. You can cable tie things to shelves. So like or in this case, there's a drop down door, with some cages are great for that with the drop down door, but you can also cable tie things. Like this is a 6-pack. It's secured by baby links, or in this case, this is one of those, they sell them in the baby department for washing things in the dishwasher. So I like to put plants in them. And so the pot is actually ends. I don't know if my cursor's showing right there. It ends about here. So whatever's growing can be eaten, but they don't destroy the dirt. So it will keep growing. And it's cable tied to the very back of the shelf there. So that's a great way to have enrichment, nutrition, sprouts, shelf, and everything all in one package there. And then again, here's little birds enjoying all different shapes and sizes. As you see, one of them's on a shelf. That's that sun deck shelf again, which just picks up and moves. It's just very versatile, though we often will cable tie it so it doesn't fall down depending on the species. And here's some other examples of shelves. The macaw had a lifetime injury, so we got a super long piece of wood that extended far beyond the sides of the cage, so that this bird could slide across because it didn't have one of the feet was not operable. Or the little Amazon there, she had some foot issues, so we gave her a soft place to be. But I don't know if the Birds on the Rocks is in business anymore. I don't think they are, but the rocks are great for grooming nails. And just because it's a very natural thing, you can probably find rocks that you can actually work with, or even put on top of the cage, because the outside of the cage is just as valuable as the inside of the cage. So my view of cages is that they not only need to be wide enough so that birds can move a lot, but they need to have at least 2 action things inside the cage. If there's not enough room for at least 2 action things, then the cage is definitely not wide enough and too small, because you want them being able to move with some activity as they go from one place to another. So a lot of toys also can be considered perches. Some of you may be familiar with the Expandable Habitats skewers. I like those because you can drill a hole in like a piece of wood like this. Is my cursor working, Laura? Can you see? Okay, great. So you can take a piece of wood like that and drill a hole through it and put the skewers through the holes, and then refill the skewers with toys. So it makes a perch and enrichment at the same time. But a lot of things that you think of are just a toy that you might just hang can actually be a perch as well. So make it fun. I always put a perch on the door because I want the bird to feel like they can come out of the cage and still feel safe. They can go back in. They always have choice. Choice and empowerment are the 2 operative words, in my opinion, for everything we do with our birds. So choosing to come out when they want to come out is a great thing. They can choose to go back. But that perch on the outside of the door makes them feel like they still can, have their privacy or their safety if they need it. And it's a good way to start working with a bird who maybe doesn't want to come out of the cage, to learn to explore a little bit more. Or if you have a Quaker, we get a lot of Quakers who relinquish because they are, quote, mean, because people try to put their hands in the cage. And Quakers, as we know from seeing them in the wild, they do not like anything intruding into their space. Once they come out of their space, the personality changes completely. So giving them an opportunity to come out of the cage in a way that works for you too is a great way to go. So when they don't move, this is an Amazon that came to us. It's just riddled with arthritis. She was in a 20 by 20 cage for almost 30 years, which is a horrible size for an Amazon. I think she had maybe 2 perches. So she hardly moved, right? And that's just pitiful, right? It's just, so we had to actually build like a oversized shelf for her to try to walk on to get to her food and water, and slowly moved her bowls farther apart. So she had to get a little activity, because with arthritis, there's, other than painkillers, the only other thing that really helps is for them to get action and to get moving. So here's an example of, what can happen to the bottom of the feet also if they don't have proper perching options. So here's, I love showing our pictures from the wild because we learn so much when we go on our eco tours. This is an Amazon who works so hard for all the pods. And I mean, he was never just sitting on a perch eating. He worked really hard to get to it. Maybe he got 2 or 3 bites before something happened and he had to fly off. But you can see this is not the perfect perch for his feet. This is whatever he could land on. And I think he was enjoying the fun too. I mean, who knows what's in his head, right? But looked like he was having fun to me. And I mean, look at this macaw. This is not what you'd call a big perch. This is a bird just having fun. Well, they emulate that in captivity as well. This is one of the earliest cockatoos that came to us, I think back in 2002. He's back with us now for his 4th home. He came in this round cage, which everybody who relinquishes a bird in a cage like this calls it huge. The cage fell in their house, rolled on the ground. The wing got stuck in between the bars. They had to amputate the wing. So round cages, there's nothing good about a round cage. A round cage gives them no space to get out of the way or to hide or to move or anything. There's nothing positive. So this is just an example of a real life example of what happens when a round cage falls and trauma ensues. Okay, so after the perches are all in place, then I start to think about, where are they going to eat? Where are they going to drink? That's kind of the next step in putting it all together. And, almost all birds have pellets, for example. So putting a water on the other side of the cage from where their pellets are is a great way to go, because then they have to walk across the cage to dunk those pellets into the water, which is what most of them want to do, right? So that makes them have to move. Everybody has different opinions about bottles and bowls. I am personally not a bottle fan. I find that most people get them for convenience and they don't wash them like they should. And they need to be washed just as much, if not more, than bowls do. Also, I've known birds that have died because the little ball at the end of the spout got stuck. So if you do use water bottles, I know there's some veterinarians who are pretty insistent about it. Just make sure that you are cleaning them regularly and that the little ball works. But I would also encourage you to have a bowl available as an option for just a chance for a bird to play, have a water feature, to dunk their food or take a bath or just have fun. I mean, water is enrichment too, right? And if you have an African gray, they especially sometimes enjoy you throwing a few ice cubes in there. I don't know what it is, but grays and ice cubes, they seem to find those very interesting, especially for bathing sometimes. So here's our little pipsqueak friend again. He's always really good at teaching other birds what to do. He did finally find his home, thank goodness. But as you can see, the cages are full. We always fill them up with activity. But he was teaching this other conure how to bathe. So a lot of birds like to bathe in water bowls, or if you're still having trouble, try turning on the vacuum cleaner and see if that inspires them to bathe in the bowl. That emulates the sound of the rainforest. And then we look at how we're going to eat. There are lots of ways to eat. This is a severe macaw who was she gets ramped up pretty easily. So her adopter does a great job of making food a hard work. And so every day she gets her food wrapped in these different little packages and she has to work to get them out. But again, I love skewers. Skewers are a great way to just put different things, toys, food, variety thereof, hang it in a different place every day. You know, life in the wild is challenging. It's never easy, frankly. And looking for food is, as we know, foraging is a really important thing for our birds now. So making it a new opportunity to do things in a different way, I think not only is good for the bird's physical health, but it keeps that mental agility going too. You know, if you had to live in a small space with little to do, you know, you would eventually just feel pretty oppressed, frankly. I love clipping things to the side of the cage, especially for little birds. They really enjoy, cockatiels love leafy greens, and parakeets love, you know, a little broccoli, or just setting it on top of the cage. So they have to go up and pull it down. You know, the world could be a totally new place. You don't have to put everything in the same place every day. Okay, and then I think about where are they going to sleep? So I think it's really important to know and remember that our birds sleep at the highest spot. That's what they do in the wild. That's what they usually do in our cages. So I try to always put a cotton perch at the top for them to sleep on, because I think that's the best thing for their feet. And I just want to, those of you who have conures who love their happy huts, just be careful, as this x-ray shows from an AAV presentation. You know, they get impactions. We actually have a speaker coming in October who's going to show some surgical information about how she had to pull out a really long piece of fabric to keep this bird from dying. We've had 2 birds come to us that have died in pretty short order because they had been eating fabric. So, you know, they look like they're regurgitating, maybe because they're getting matey or whatever, or maybe they're impacted. But it seems to be mostly common with conures. So I just want to make a pitch to be careful about happy huts, especially if they're eating. If you see them eating them, it's probably a sign that you need to find a different way to offer them privacy. And privacy is one of those things I think we fail to acknowledge, that birds need privacy too. You know, they appreciate having the opportunity to hide. So this African gray, when he came to us, you can see he's in pretty bad feather shape. He was feeling stressed for whatever reason, as African grays often do. They seem to be more sensitive sometimes. Some want to be like right out front, seeing everything going on, and other African grays tend to be more hesitant and cautious, and maybe even more prone to feather picking. So it helped him a lot to have something to hide behind. But I make sure every bird in every cage has something to hide behind. So it's always their choice if they want to get away. And that's just respectful, right? So a lot of times people are like, well, I shouldn't put it in front of the window because then they're going to be nervous. Well, maybe consider putting it half in front of the window and half not in front of the window. So that, again, they have that, they're empowered to make that choice of when they want to see something and when they want to be alone. But as we talk about in behavior too, you know, that personal space is really important. And birds are not automatically trusting you, especially if they're new to your household. You have to earn that trust. And invading their personal space is the surest way to break trust right off the bat. So giving them that opportunity to choose to be away from you while you build that trust, in my opinion, is one of the keys to building a successful relationship. So here's just some other ideas. Here's this little cockatiel hiding behind a big toy. Quakers who like to hide in their little. This is that same bird who I showed you before, who had the feather issue. We realized that he really liked having a paper bag. In fact, we could transport him anywhere in the paper bag. He would climb in the bag and we could carry him to the vet's office or to the aviary or whatever. That was his mode of transportation. So. All right, so here's just some other quick samples of how to do privacy. There's a couple of other options for replacing happy huts that are a little more safe. And then of course we have to be good observers of behavior. We have to know when privacy becomes nesting, which is a whole different issue, right? And sometimes we're not sure. So observing your bird's body language, I would say, looking at this, I'd say at least 4 of these I would call nesting. A couple of them I'm not so sure. Cockatoos love to get under things and hide. And oops, let me go back. In this case, Birdie, who's over here, I don't think she was nesting because she's been making holes that she pops out of like windows. You know, she was just having fun that day. But when you look at things like this, I would say that's definitely nesting. That's definitely nesting. I don't know. You have to know your bird. Would you call that nesting, or would you call that I'm just hiding because this is fun to do today, right? Speaking of cockatoos, they tend to spend a lot of time on the ground, even in the wild. So I like giving them activities to do on the floor of their cage. Some cockatoos, you can put the paper on top of the grate. Others you can't because they immediately want to tear it apart. But having an activity box is a great way to give them some activity in what is a more natural, you know, to be lower is more natural to them in many ways. I know a lot of cockatoos who purposely throw their food down they go down and eat it. Subject of one. I love this, Michelle. This is well, brown neck, and this is in order to keep the box, which is his play area, from getting poop on it, she put it inside of this other apparatus, which they used to sell, she said, at Target, which is like a cubby or something, so that if he's up higher in the cage and he poops, he's not pooping in his activity box, which I think is brilliant. So in this case, like a lot of African species, he's digging around and spending time chewing on wood. All right, and then we've talked a little bit about this already, but how wide is your cage? People always tell, my cage is 60 inches high. I'm like, I don't care how high it is. I want to know how wide it is. That's what counts. And in this case, these are minimums in our opinion, minimums. So the larger birds, especially, you just can't go wide enough. They absolutely need to move. So this is one of those like 64 by 32 cages. And you can see this gray has a lot of activity and a lot of space, which is fantastic. And then I love Carrie's natural inspiration walk-in aviaries. They're also a lot of fun. Of course, nothing's cheap anymore and things take a lot of space. But, you know, frankly, if we're going to have birds, we have to think about what gives them the best quality of life. And sometimes if you want a cockatoo, you can't put them in a 20 by 20 cage and think you're doing right by them. It's just not right. These are my 2 little Rosellas. They live in a 60-inch wide cage and they are all over it. They're moving back and forth all over the place all the time. So now let's put it all together. So we know we want lots of different perches. We want as much action as possible. We want to make them move around for their food. And so if I'm starting with a cage, this is just kind of my basics. There's always a shelf up in the back. There's food in many different places. There's at least 2 action things going on. And a lot of times they want to move back and forth across the top of the cage. And then of course, don't forget your privacy. So this is just to give you guys a starting point if you're like, I don't know where to start. So I start with the purchase, add the bowls, and then go back and add the toys. So there's an example. When you have two boings together like that, they bounce on one to get to the other side. That's great. And then don't forget the outside of the cage. That's really what I call valuable real estate. Hopefully your bird is spending time outside the cage, hopefully going to other places as well. But you can do a whole lot on the outside of the cage. You can put all kinds of perches. You can just put this gray spent all afternoon just trying to get this piece of cardboard from the top of the cage. You know, we can't let the birds out in our adoption center the same way you might be able to at home. So we have to think of other kind of creative ways to keep them busy by putting things around the cage. But for your birds at home, the outside is really super, super useful, especially if you aren't able to have other activity areas for them to go to. You have to be more creative about their cage and the outside of it as well. I mean, look how much fun he's having. And he's exercising his feet, right? So you could do a lot of things by putting a play stand next to the cage or hanging things from the ceiling. I love hanging things from the ceiling because it keeps them off the floor, out of trouble, out of being stepped on. And it makes them feel comfortable because they're going high. So we use grid wall in the adoption center. It's up so that we can move things around because you never know how the cages are going to have to shift depending on what birds are there. So that grid wall gives us a chance and a way to move things around that works for them as well. And it's just a nice, stable place to consider different enrichment. So here's a couple of macaws who said, yeah, this looks fun. Not what we intended there, Layla. And always like, yeah, I want to play. How do I get there, right? This is some of you may have seen this electrical conduit in PVC. Laura Ford, who was one of our volunteers a while ago, came up with this. It's real easy to make. It probably is about $10 in parts. The electrical conduit goes into the PVC and it's you don't have to use glue or anything. It connects and it's very strong. And so you can put it together in all different ways because, you know, they don't sell atoms anymore, which was just a wonderful thing for birds to have, the atoms. So we have to think of different ways to have new equivalents. So this was a hyacinth that came to us that just, well, I don't think that she had moved a lot in her past. So we finally got her coming out to the swing, which we hung, which was great because then we got her moving around that way. But then she always wanted to go back to her safety spot inside the cage. So we progressively made that harder for her to do. So she had to figure out how to get down and get to it. So all that was activity for her body, but also definitely mentally challenging for her mind. Yay. Here's my two blue and golds. The one on the right is the one that was in the pet store for 20 years without feet that moved or tendons that are permanently broken. And look at her now hanging upside down, right? But here is just an example. I built this. I just found an old table. I put some kitchen stick-on tiles on top of it. And then I put 2x4s around in different configurations. And the blue and gold on the left, she spends all day going in and out, chewing on the wood. So whenever she finishes chewing the wood, no problem. I can just replace it, right? But it's got every day, there's different things inside each of those little sections. And it's a great way to just get some new things going for her. This is actually Phoenix, the one in the front there. And I'm just a shout out to the macaw love. I love this hanging thing. This is how they eat their food. So they have to get down to this swinging thing to eat their food. And it's a really nice resource. I like it. So let's talk a little bit about plants, because plants are anything from a stalk of Brussels sprouts to this gray up here is eating the bark from roses of Sharon. Roses of Sharon is one of those safe plants. This is jasmine. He loves his radish sprouts and other things that we sprout in a container garden in the aviary. Or again, you can take something and put it next to the cage and then put a container garden there. So all they have to do is climb down from the cage and go over to the container garden. Or you could just make it simple and stick a, this is Jasmine, who was white when he came to us because he was so vitamin A deficient. And now he's so pink. And hot peppers are one of the best sources for that. So here we go. This is Phoenix and Nutty again. Sometimes I just hand them a piece of greenery of some kind. Again, little things can make for big enrichment. Here's the Quakers in their aviary. The kale sometimes falls on the ground and it sprouts and it grows up and it makes the flowers. So we don't pull it out until it's ready to go to seed again, because they sit there and they eat the flowers. How beautiful is that? So there are a lot of great plants. It's always a question. There are some good resources, but my favorite one is this one, MD Vaden. He does a really good job of telling you what's anecdotal versus what's scientifically proven. So if you have any safe plants in your neighborhood, I encourage you to check it out. I don't think, unless they've been treated, that I don't take time to actually wash anything. I just pull them off and shove it in. So here's a couple of other ideas for plants. This is a Christmas tree stand you can put something in. Or this is a butterfly bush, another really safe one that's kept steady by putting inside a pot with heavy rocks. Or you can, again, just clip some greens or something to the side of the cage or give them some browse to play with. This was a crepe myrtle, I think, that this cockatoo spent the day demolishing. There it is, the two cockatoos. Who gets it first, right? How to clean cage. I don't know about you guys, but there's some smelly stuff out there that I don't like to smell. So if I don't like to smell it, I know the birds don't want to smell it, but these are my two favorite cleaners. Chlorhexidine is about no more than $20 probably for that gallon. And if you only have one or two birds, that's going to last you a year probably. We go through a bottle maybe every 2 to 3 weeks for the adoption center. We dilute it. It's really good for most bacteria, some viruses, and some fungus. And it leaves no residue. I think that's really nice because, some things leave residue. I also like BioGreen Clean because it's plant-based and doesn't smell. It's pretty expensive, but again, it's going to last you a really long time. And here, a lot of birds get relinquished to us because they have allergies. The people have allergies or lung issues. And as a former long-term smoker, I'm especially attentive to my lungs and my lung health being around birds. So I always spritz the paper and I fold it carefully so that the dander doesn't fly everywhere and roll it up. I just think that's really important for your health and your bird's health. And, if your bird doesn't demolish the paper, put it on top of the grate. I can't tell you how many times people come to bring their birds to us and they see that we have paper on top of the grate and they're like, you could do that? And I'm like, yeah, why should you clean the grate if you didn't have to, right? So keep it easy because most people start to get a little lax on cleaning, frankly. I try to clean almost every bar every day because if you do that, it's very easy to just make a quick swipe every day. If you wait, then it becomes overwhelming and it's just not healthy for you or your bird. The other thing I do is I put paper up the side so that it helps prevent more dirt from getting between the cracks and other things. So just another little tip. So I think it's pretty obvious to everybody here, right? These are not appropriate for birds. Most importantly, no place to go, nothing to do. That's one of our mottos, mantras, places to go and things to do. So we often get this question too, what kind of cage should we get? So my personal opinion is if you're away from home a lot, a dome top is going to give your bird more place for activity. You could still decorate the outside of it and do a lot with it so that when you do get home and open the door, there's more activity. But if you're home a lot, then having a play top is also kind of handy, because then they're outside of the cage more often and you have more activity zones easy to fill up. So you just have to do what's right for you and your family and your bird. So in summary, places to go, things to do. So wide, not tall. Super highway of purchase, as many that are action oriented as possible. Get that highway system going first before you decide where to put the food and how you're going to put the food. And then make sure you're always giving them some privacy and places to go and things to do. So there's the retreat again. And Phoenix says, thank you very much. This is one of my playgrounds.
Nice. There's a lot of busyness right there. Keep them busy.
Yeah, but it even gets
boring
if I don't change it, after a while, it's like, yeah, I didn't see that. It's been there for the last 6 months, but you put it in a new spot and they're like, wow, that's a new thing to do. Woohoo.
Yeah. Nice. I was going to ask you, Anne, how often do you rotate toys or move them from different areas in the cage? Is that something that people should put on a calendar or remind app or something like, hey,
some people need that. Some people need that kind of reminder in order to do something different. A lot of times I take my cues from the bird. So some birds may be like, I need to know where I'm going and feel like I've got a steady space. But we often think we know what they're thinking. And then we put ourselves inside their heads and we come up with our interpretation. And then when we do that, we tend to have restricted other ways of thinking about the situation. So I try very hard not to say the bird thinks that, because I don't know what the bird thinks. All I know is that I need to continue to offer empowerment and opportunity. And if I see the body language react to something in a way that doesn't seem comfortable, which is, a bird's pretty clear. Unless you're just totally blinded to your bird's behavior, they are going to, fall back or open a beak to lunge. They're either going to be defensive or cautious, but a lot of times they're going to lean forward and go, what's that? And sometimes, just like in nutrition, it's about presentation. Sometimes how we present something makes a difference to how the bird reacts to it.
Good point. Good point. Well, so hey, are you ready for some questions? All right. We'll just do, let's see, if you want to stop the screen share and then, perfect. Okay. All right. Ready for the first one?
Yes.
This is from SG. Do you have tips on offering an enriching environment for a bird who is in a hospital cage? So we have a Nande that's in a hospital cage and can't climb around or perch too well. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions?
That sounds kind of like that Amazon I showed you the video of that couldn't move a lot. So we had to raise the grate basically to be really high so that there was no chance of falling.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, hospital cages, that could be anything. A hospital cage can be something big or something little. I don't know enough about what this bird's capabilities are. Okay. To be able to answer that, I don't think. Maybe she can give us more information.
Okay. We'll find that while we're waiting for that. Shelley wanted to know, what is a safe cable to use? Yeah,
they make stainless steel cable ties, which is great for those birds who have the capacity to clip off a plastic one in 2 seconds, like macaws and cockatoos. But plastic cable ties are great too. I also buy those stainless or those the cables that hang from the ceiling that I'm not explaining it right. The thing I showed you, the macaw love thing, the Phoenix eats from.
Yeah.
I got those cables they're like circled in plastic. I don't know what you would, there's a name for them. Anyway, I covered them with PVC so they couldn't bite the cable. And I drilled holes through the PVC so that I can hang toys through the PVC. So if you're ever worried about, like if you're hanging something from the ceiling, I don't usually use those ceiling things anymore because a lot of times they have glue and they've been known to fall apart and drop. So I use these cables and cover them with PVC so that I know that they're secure.
Oh, good point. Oh, I have more intel about the hospital cage. It's a large aquarium.
A large aquarium.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard.
Yeah.
I don't know with an aquarium. Yeah, I mean, you could put things over the side, I guess.
Drape it down, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, get some kind of hooks where you can put hooks over and hang toys from the hooks. But I would think that this bird would appreciate having a great like environment, not just a towel. But you know, again, it depends on this bird and their medical condition.
Okay. Okay. And then so is it possible to counteract like if a bird had a bumblefoot? Is that something?
It's usually related to gout.
Yeah.
And so that's uric acid. And so kidney stuff is really hard to fix as compared to liver, which can often have some, you know, it can regenerate. Cherries are super good for gout. Cherries, just making sure there's no rough perches that's going to exacerbate an already raw foot, but that sounds like a kidney issue largely.
Okay, yeah, they inherit the bird with the bumblefoot, so maybe a diet overhaul and
omega-3s. You know, we're not talking nutrition today, but omega-3s.
Okay, and then does the covered foraging tray cause any hormonal issues? Can it be stimulating? Hormonal, like stimulating?
What forage? Which foraging?
So I want to know about the covered foraging tray. Could that possibly cause hormonal issues?
I'm not sure what she was talking about, a foraging tray.
Maybe I wonder if they mean the box.
Oh, like the plastic bins at the bottom?
Maybe, I'm not sure, but I'd be curious. Is that?
Yeah, the plastic things with the toy parts in it.
Oh, the box with the anti-poop cover. Okay.
Yeah,
well, and that might actually be. Yeah.
The beauty of that is that it was open on both sides. Gotcha. It just had the cover like an umbrella, you know, to prevent the rain poop. So again, you have to know your bird and see what happens if a bird starts getting nesty versus just playing. That's a whole different environment, and you know that because they're going to start, you know, rubbing on things, regurgitating, sitting in one spot, lifting their tail, like, you know, all those kind of sexy things they can do when they're feeling matey.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned that was at Target. That might be very well when they have the back to school supplies, the locker shelves that you can buy, like kids can buy to put.
Yeah, you know, I have personally never seen them there, but I know that
they have something similar, like in so when fall back to school shopping, check out the kids section, see little locker.
You could probably even build one, you know, again, like doing like my 2x4s and put a stick-on tile on the top, like a kitchen tile. You get 12x12 tiles that stick on top, and that just wipes right off if they poop on it.
Oh, very cool. It's kind of funny how having a bird in your life can make you be more of a handy person than you thought with going to being creative and handy with.
You have to think outside the normal human action. Yeah.
Yes. And you're creating stuff that you can't find in stores, so you're making it
right. Right.
So Janine just adopted a 5-year-old cockatiel that prefers flat surfaces and sits on the edge of the food cups to perches. So is that okay for their feet if the bird just, you know, outside the box thinking with perching?
Anything that's not the same all the time is good.
And
Yeah, I
then,
don't know why sometimes they like to put their feet like, I don't know how to do it on Zoom here, put their feet like that instead of being able to curl it, but they do. They often will be on, you know, on something that's just like that. You're like, but you can't curl your feet. But they,
yeah,
if they like it, great. As long as it's moving their feet, that's what counts.
okay. And then, okay, someone wanted to know where they can find the perches with the stainless steel hardware.
Stainless steel hardware. Well, a stainless steel shelf. If you're talking about the screw that goes into the wood or whatever, that's probably not usually stainless steel, but it's not something the bird can get to.
Okay.
If they want to do, Natural Inspirations has those brackets that they make powder coated and stainless that you can put 2x4s in. So that's, you know, you can use those inside and in aviaries. If I could ever afford to buy something stainless over, then I do, because I know that's going to last a long time. But
Okay.
you can buy stainless steel hardware. The question is, are you making your own perch? Or are you trying to find a perch made with stainless steel hardware? That's the harder.
Okay. And then Isabel wanted to know, they have a rounded cage top that opens at the top as well. But how do you mount the UVB light without blocking their cage, the top of the cage, the access to the top of the cage? Do you ever have any workaround? Do you have any workaround ideas for kind of keeping that space available, but having the light up there?
Put it on the wall instead of the cage. I mean, I'm always hesitant to connect anything to the cage because birds are very capable of getting into trouble, you know? And so if you could hang something from the wall or put it in a lamp that they can't reach, I think that would be safer. Is that
I
kind
think
of what
so.
you
Yeah,
think?
it opens the top. How to mount the UV light with, yeah.
If
Yeah,
it's a mounted one, yeah.
okay. And then okay, so someone has Carol has a PlayStation arriving tomorrow. Well, just in time for this webinar. Do you have any tips on acclimating the bird to it, and how long should they be on there the course of the day? You know, with water and food and toys.
You mean the PlayStation that
Yeah,
she's ordering?
yeah.
Some birds are like, bring it on, and other birds are like, whoa. You know, again, you have to be observant of your bird's body language, and it helps to have had experience interacting with the bird in other situations to have that sense of what their way of dealing with life is, you know. Some people are, we're that way too, right? Some of us are like, yay, new experience, and other ones are like, wait a minute, I'm going to think about this first, right? So I would just not make it too complicated at the beginning, put it as close to the cage as possible. Preferably, if the bird doesn't like overreact in a negative way and go running or tripping or falling, then leave it right next to the cage and let the bird explore. Come down and go back, come down, go back. If you take that bird, you move it away, you put it someplace else when it's not ready, you have potentially broken trust. So, you know, every interaction needs to be thought of in terms of trust. So if that bird is willing to go farther, great. If not, just back it up and take it slow. But give them the opportunity to make the choice. That's always the bottom line.
Good point. Good point. All right, let's see here. Oh, okay. So someone wanted to know, and this was this was such a great idea. They wanted to, Nan wants to know the plastic case with the potted plant is. I think you mentioned it was a nursery cleaning thing.
The plastic case with the pot.
It had
is that the butterfly bush that was in the pot with the rocks? Is that what we're talking about?
No, I think we're talking about it was something that they used to clean bottles or things for
the chlorhexidine. Oh, the baby bottle thing.
Yeah, the baby bottle thing. I think that's
yeah,
the dishwasher thingy.
Yeah, they have a name for those too. I'm sorry. I can't remember what it is, but it's in the baby section, and it's meant for putting like the baby bottle nipples and things like that in the dishwasher so that it's in a confined space. So that's what that is. And you know, they make great foraging toys. You can put, I mean, I put plants in it in that case, just to give you an idea of how they could eat fresh plants without destroying the dirt and everything, so it would keep growing. But you can fill it up with anything, any day. Hang it on a skewer, hang it from a rope, put it on the top of the play top. That particular item gives you lots of versatility.
And I like that a lot of the things that you showed, like the Christmas tree holder to hold something, and the other things there, not a lot of access to like a soil, like a planted,
Right.
keeping them away from, because is that something you want to avoid in general? Is
I
it,
don't know. Every bird in the wild eats dirt. Every bird in the wild eats bark. So I don't worry when they dig through organic dirt. So that doesn't have any fertilizer or anything else in it, of course. But so like we do a lot of sprouting in the aviaries where you just put especially radish seeds and some other things like that. You can just stir it into the dirt. You don't have to really go to a lot of trouble to plant. Just stir in these like things that you would sprout. Eventually they're going to sprout, and the cockatoos especially love to sit on the planter and eat the things that are sprouting and then dig through the dirt. I mean, it's a great activity, especially for a smart, bored cockatoo.
Okay. All right.
And I don't worry about the dirt. I just don't.
So maybe clean it up.
But organic, no fertilizer. That's really important.
Okay.
I'm sure there's somebody somewhere that's had trouble that may have said it was related to the dirt. But birds get bacterial infections all the time. We don't always, a lot of vets say they got it from the water, that we didn't change the water bowl. I don't know if that's true. If you have ever been to see birds in the wild, as Jason Crean often talks about with his teas, no bird is eating filtered water in the wild. They're eating capybara poop and, flowers and all kinds of things. So as long as you're attentive to refreshing it, I think it takes a while.
Okay. Okay, I guess so. Laura wanted to know, Facebook Bird Support Network say to have a heating pad as part of your first aid supplies. Do you work putting that in the cage? How does that work when you put in the cage? And do you recommend a bird safe heating pad? So another thing that goes.
Yeah, they make them for reptiles, which is really good. So if you don't have an emergency kit, one of the best things to have for an emergency kit is a tub, or I like tubs more than aquariums because they're not as heavy. And in that tub, you need to make sure you have a towel and you have a heating pad and you have all the other things that are basic first aid. But a heating pad for reptiles is thin. They make them for chickens too, but they really thin little square things that come in different sizes. Those are great to have on hand. And then you put a towel on top of it. It's safer, I think, than a heating pad because it's made for animals and it's got more protected wire. It's got covering around the cord, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And with the tub, you could drill a hole and stick it through that. With an aquarium, you can't do anything, right? With a tub, maybe for the Nande person, she could use a plastic tub and drill holes and put all kinds of things through the holes.
Okay.
That could be fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's an idea.
Yeah.
And Kathy, do you want to know why not clean with just vinegar and water? Is that an alternative?
Sure, you can. I mean, I don't use vinegar because powder coating just is terrible these days on most cages. And so if you don't get the proportion right, you've added a lot of acidic stuff. And I like that chlorhexidine actually kills some bacteria and viruses, and it doesn't smell. But yeah, vinegar and water is an old time, sturdy way of cleaning.
All right. And then Anna had a question. So they've heard that cotton rope perches can be dangerous because the bird could swallow pieces of the cotton thread. Is that true?
I have yet to see a bird swallow the cotton. I do think if you're using fabric toys, you should stick with fleece because it comes apart, or mop rope. Mm-hmm. But I'm personally, for example, not a fan of covering cages for that very reason. I don't think birds often can get the airflow they need, and they can pull the fabric and if my bird was covered and was making holes in the fabric, then I would definitely find a different way to do that, because that is the kind of fabric that can get ingested. I'm sure somebody somewhere has a bird that had a problem with a cotton rope. I am personally not aware of one.
Okay. What about with like getting, like, if their nails are too long, getting stuck in it, or afraid
Yeah.
of cotton rope? Is that more of an issue?
Well, you know, they come apart pretty easily. Again, I'm more worried about chain. I've seen birds. I'm not a fan of chain.
Mm.
If a toy does have chain, then I either restring it or put PVC over it, because if a bird's nails are long, they can get caught in the chain faster than they often do in a cotton rope. But again, using the right kind of fabric, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere whose bird got stuck on a cotton rope, and maybe it's because the nails were too long. But again, I've never known that to happen,
Okay.
because I think those Buddha perches, the cotton perches, they unfray pretty quickly. You know.
Okay. And those ones you can actually contour them to be like, curved or straight.
Right.
They're so bendable that they offer a lot of options, especially in
Right.
those like parts where you're trying to put something like you can just kind of force it to kind of make it mold to an area of the cage that gives your bird,
Exactly.
right?
In fact, we use the Buddha perches. I don't know if I can show this here, where they like this, they're like that, right? And we teach all the birds to step on the top of the perch, so that our hands are not teaching them. They're learning to have a transportation system on top of that. And then you can raise it high so they feel safe. They can't come down and go up to your shoulder. It's just a really good transportation system, especially for a bird who may feel like one person in the family is great and everybody else must die. You know, that's a great way to help have a safe transportation system.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
It's one of the skills we try, at least for the few birds that actually move through our adoption center. That's one of the skills we try to teach them.
Wow.
Because wood can sometimes, a lot of birds are like, you know, some are okay,
Yeah.
especially the ones that have the coconut over the fist. I think that's really good, because whenever I walk up to a bird, even a bird I've lived with for 25 years, I almost always have my hands behind my back. I am never coming at a bird like that. That is just asking a prey animal to say, right? So respect is not trying to be all, you know, I'm going to eat you for dinner.
Oh, I can imagine like this visual. It's
Yeah.
like if a person came at you like that, you'd be like, wait.
Exactly. You'd either be like hit upside the face, or you'd be like, no, I'm running away. So the birds are the same way. They're either going to be defending themselves, or they're going to be like nervous. We don't want either one of those. Neither one of those are good outcomes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, let's see. I think we have maybe time for one more question, if you don't mind.
Lord.
And then while I wait for that question, what would be like your bare minimum essentials that every cage should have? Is there something like that? Like someone's like,
yeah, good
different
question.
variety, like a minimum of like 3 different variety perches, or
And 2 action toys and 3 places to eat, and that would be a starter to me. I mean, people walk in our adoption center all the time and go, oh my God, the cages are so full. And we're like, yeah. I mean, there's like at least 10 toys, and at least 5 perches, and at least 3 places to eat, and at least 2 action toys, and usually stuff on the outside. And that's, for us, that's the starter kit. So.
okay. So if you're cage shopping, you might kind of visualize how much space will be left over once you put everything in the cage with the toys and the perches, that the bird still has an area to, stretch his wings out, right? So you kind of got big cage, buy a big cage so you can put all these enrichments inside. That's another reason.
Hopefully they're getting time outside the cage, right? So
yes, yeah, that's true. That's true. That would be a lot of flapping and
if they're not getting time outside the cage, then I think you need to consider an even wider cage.
Okay.
So you can have places to go, things to do, and spread your wings and or fly. Especially little birds, they like to flitter around,
That is very true. And then let's see. Okay, another question about the lights. So this one's from Barbara. Do you have any suggestions for the full spectrum lights / lamps regarding the placement for maximum safety? So they're not shining into the bird's eyes.
Right. Yeah, again, empowerment and choice. It always comes down to that for me. So I prefer to put a light on the wall so that the bird can come towards it or away from it. Um, they say within 18 inches is what's required. And you have to be careful, there's UVA and UVB, and UVB is the only one that really helps with the D3. UVA helps with mental, but it's not necessarily giving them that ultraviolet that's good for absorbing their D3. I'm going blank right now. There's a new boba. It starts with an A. I'm sorry, I can't remember it in this moment. But there aren't a lot of good options in some cases for birds for UVB lights. And you don't want to use the reptile lights that are red. That's definitely not the right way to go. So
Okay. Let's see. I think, gosh, so that was a really good. I love the you kind of showed us how to. I mean, the visuals of all this is definitely something that is so insanely helpful because it's hard to describe. You can describe it, but when you see how you place it in
right.
the items, it just sparks all these ideas that hopefully people can run with and create their own spectacular opportunities for exercise and activity inside their birds environments and outside the birds environments.
Yeah.
You're right.
Don't forget the ceiling. The ceiling is really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hanging
I love that you think inside the cage, but there's also territory that's outside the cage and around the cage. And so maybe kind of rethink that your bird's environment is not just where it roosts at night inside the cage. It's just like ours. We got multiple places that we all go to.
Exactly.
Not our bedroom.
So you're creating a house with many rooms inside the cage. But I always think, that's just, again, kind of like your starter kit. You want to keep expanding. You want to keep adding things for them to do around the outside of the cage, next to the cage, in the next room, from the ceiling. You can keep expanding out so that there's opportunities for new and exciting things all the time.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. Gosh, we'll try it. We'll get to the I know we have a few more questions, but we can always, that's why we have used the Q&A feature. We can capture it and email you a reply. And let's see, I think that's all we have time for today. And I was gonna thank you once again, Anne. That was just it's such an important part and fun part. This should be like the fun part of having a bird in your life, right? Is finding that satisfaction of seeing them just like your creation they love, or and then if it's hit or miss, you just reconfigure it and try something new.
Exactly. It should bring the kid out in us that we want to play too, right? So, and our birds are so smart and they get so bored so fast that we have to remember to change things up sometimes.
Yes. Okay. And so once again, when is that conference? I mean,
the wellness retreat. Yeah. June 4th and 5th in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a beautiful place. Everybody's moving here these days. It's just, a really fabulous location. It's at the university. You could register online by going to phoenixlanding.org. And it's 4 tracks simultaneously, 9 to 5 for 2 days, lots of great people. You can nerd out on science, or you can just have fun talking about wild parrots and making toys, whatever is your cup of tea. So we try to make it for everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's see, as I'm just going to give a sneak peek also of what we have coming up next Friday for our webinar. This one, we're going to be back on with Dr. Stephanie Lamb, and she's going to do common medications that your vet might prescribe and why. Well, that'll be interesting because we have pet meds. That's for the birds. That would be very informative, hopefully, just like they always are. All right, so I'm going to announce today's giveaway winner. We do have one, and that is going out to, let's see, Kath Disney Nielsen. That is going out to you, Kath. And let me pray. I'm going to try to share my screen. Bear with me 1 second because I have a video of Arroyo, who's our resident, I guess, taster of all these product giveaways. This is Dr. Stephanie Lamb's some bird. So I'm going to do a screen share of that. And let's see here. Hopefully this works. Where's my video? There we go. So it's going to be the garden veggie if I get to play. So that's gonna be all right. Hopefully.
Ryan and I came out this morning so that we could enjoy the
Okay, come on,
garden
make it big.
and do a little bit of harvest.
Little technical difficulty. Hang on a second. I am determined to get this to work. There we go. Okay.
Ryan and I came out this morning so that we could enjoy the garden.
There we go. That's the giveaway.
Do a little bit of harvesting of certain things that we need for making some dinner later today. And I decided I'd give Arroyo this great garden vegetable where he might be able to enjoy some special treat that we have hidden on the inside.
Oh, see, this is a nice way to make a foraging
What if I take this
idea.
top off?
A foraging on top of a foraging food in a foraging item makes for excellent foraging. There we go.
Ooh,
All right, that's going out to
special
you, Kath, and
treats.
your bird, and hopefully they'll enjoy that, and they also get another bag of your of a Lafeber of your bird's choice. So there we go. On that note, I'm going to. There we go. That's the package going out.
Pretty delicious.
All right, everybody. I think our time is up. But thanks, Anne. Thank you once again, and everyone have a great weekend. All the best to you and your flock. Until next time, stay safe.